Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tashima for those who don't know me, and if this is your first time watching, welcome. So today I wanted to talk about my NICU experience. If you haven't seen my previous video, it was about me giving birth at 33 weeks due to preeclampsia. Of course, was extremely early and she had to stay in the special care nursery. So this video picks up where that one left off. Okay, so the hospital I delivered at, the NICU, is actually called the special care nursery. And so my daughter says, ended up staying there for about, I think it was 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks. And when you deliver really early and you have a premature baby, they tell you not to expect the baby home before the original due date. So she was born January 26, 2017, but her original due date was March 14, 2017. So she was 7 weeks early. And so they tell you that so you don't get your hopes up and expect your baby to be coming home in a week or whatever, because there's a lot of developmentally that they still have to do that they would have done in the womb, but now they're doing it on the outside. And for my baby, I remember the nurses telling me sometimes it's better for you to deliver, especially because she had IUGR. It's better for them to be on the outside than the inside so they can get the food and nutrition and all that they needed inside that kept them so small. Sometimes they thrive better on the outside. If you hear any noise in the background, it's thunder and outside right now, so just forgive me for that. But in the special care nursery, only family was allowed, and I think one friend, but they had to come with a family member if you had a band on. And it was, super sterile environment, and they keep it that way so that the babies, because they're so premature, their immune systems are just not where they need to be as a full-term baby. So they just really try to minimize sicknesses and illnesses of other people coming in and out. So whenever you came in, you had to wash your hands with this sterile soap, and it came with a brush, so you had to scrub your fingers underneath your fingernails and everything like that to make sure that you were super clean when you came in, and if you did hold the baby. So I ended up staying in the hospital for a whole week after the delivery. But once I did go home, I just went back and forth to the hospital every day. I visited her every day, and sometimes I stayed overnight because she was born in the winter, and of course, there's snowstorms and stuff like that, and I just didn't want to be stuck at home and not being able to see her. So I visited her every day for those 5 weeks. It was really long, but I just felt like she needed to see me every day, and I needed to be with her every day, to hold her every day. And so I made that a priority. So for those 5.5 weeks, I was there every day. They have 4 requirements that they have to meet before they're able to go home. And the first one is they have to maintain their body temperature. They have to take all their feedings by mouth. They have to be breathing on their own. And then the 4th one is that they have to be at least 4 pounds before they go home. My baby was only 2 pounds and 11 ounces, so I knew she had a long way to go before she even met the weight requirement. When she came out, she had an IV. She had an umbilical IV as well. She had an NG tube for feedings, and she also was put on caffeine for her heart for a couple of days. So she was in an isolette for the first, I can't really remember how long it was, but I think it was a couple of weeks. And the isolette is a heated, kind of a heated crib, and it's covered on all 4 sides. I do have some pictures that I can show. And it helps them to maintain their body temperature. And she had the NG tube because she was just really too small to be breastfeeding by mouth. So I pumped as soon as I got back to my room. And breastfeeding went really well for me. I really thank my mom for that because she was really instrumental in the tips that she gave me. When I went back to my room, she had me pump. She gave me a lot of great tips. She told me to drink water every time I went to breastfeed. Every time I went to pump. At that point, I was still pumping, and she was getting the milk through the NG tube. So I did that, and I could even tell when I hadn't drunk water first and then pumped. So I pumped religiously. Every 3 hours I was pumping. Even when I was discharged from the hospital and I went home, I had a pump, and every 3 hours I set my alarm. So I'm pumping day and night for a whole 24 hours, every 3 hours, to make sure that she had enough milk. Breastfeeding is really important to me, or it was really important to me, because I feel in a situation where everything went wrong, well, to me, everything went wrong, and I had no control over everything, I felt like breastfeeding was the one thing that I could control. And my milk came in right away. I didn't have any problems with that. I was producing colostrum before I gave birth, which is great because for 33 weeks, that's kind of early to be producing colostrum. But I did have some. My milk came in right away. The C-section didn't interfere with that. I pumped every 3 hours, so she got only my breast milk. I did sign for donor milk just in case she needed it, but she got all my breast milk while she was in a special care nursery. And of course, while I wasn't there, she did have to have bottles. But when I came in and when she was able to breastfeed by mouth, she could. I remember though that she had to have the NG tube even when she was breastfeeding by mouth, because they didn't want her to use all of her energy on breastfeeding, because they wanted her to use, you know, her energy to gain the weight that she needed to leave and go home. So breastfeeding is a lot of work for babies, and so for premature babies, they just sometimes are not ready to expel that extra energy on breastfeeding. So she had an NG tube for a while. I remember there were times where she would take it out, like she would take it out of her nose. And yeah, she was just always feisty from the very beginning, always super strong. She would take it out, they would put it back in, she would take it out, until eventually one day they was like, look, she doesn't even need it, she's doing fine with the breastfeeding. So she did have a bottle while I wasn't there and able to breastfeed. So I remember there was a concern in the beginning when she started breastfeeding, actually from the breast, that she was getting enough. So we did weighted feedings, which means they weigh the baby. I think they strip them down to their diaper. And they weigh the baby before they're being nursed, and then they weigh them after they're nursed. And then that way they can track how much milk they actually got. And so she always did excellent with that. So after like probably about 5 times, they were like, look, you're doing good. Breastfeeding is going good. We're not even going to weigh her anymore. Just whenever you come in, you can breastfeed her. So most of the times I would try to get to the hospital by like 11. And in the beginning, of course, I couldn't drive. So, you know, I had family members drive me back and forth. And then once I could drive, I drove myself. So I would get there like 11. And a lot of times I would stay until like 7, 8 o'clock at night. Go home, take a shower, eat dinner, go to sleep, set my alarm to pump, get up and pump, go to sleep, set my alarm to pump. So it was a lot, and then I just tried to make sure I was there for her. It would be her second feeding of the day. The special care nursery was like really strict on making sure that they ate every 3 hours. And while she was in the hospital, that was fine. But when she eventually came home, I fed on demand. So she did have, with my breast milk, initially she had a fortifier, which they added to my breast milk, and it was powder form, and it was like a high calorie fortifier, just so that she could gain extra weight quicker than the breast milk would have given her. So it had like more fat in it and more calories, and that was added to my breast milk while she was in the hospital. They did send me home with the fortifier, but for some reason when she came home, it just made her really sick. I'm not sure if it was the same brand that they used in the hospital. Yeah, we just stopped using it and we just breastfed all the way from then. So that's why I'm really passionate about breastfeeding, because I know in that situation when we were going through the special care nursery, that was our bond. Like I felt like the one thing that I could do right, or the one thing that really only I could do for her. So that's why I love breastfeeding, and I breastfed with all my kids, and that, to me, that experience is super special. And so every day when I was pumping, I would bring it to the hospital. And I remember that they gave me a bag of my milk one day, and I was like, why are you giving me the milk? Doesn't the baby need it? And it was like, look, we had too much milk. We got milk in the freezer. We got milk in the refrigerator. We got milk everywhere. Please take your milk home. So I never had a problem with supply. I always kind of tend to overproduce milk, which was great. And I used that milk for later. But when she came home, we were exclusively breastfeeding. And I remember one of the nurses, when I was walking out, she said, she said, you have enough milk to feed Burlington County. And to me, that was like the greatest compliment I ever received. I was like, really? I do? So I was just so happy that I was able to provide that breast milk for my baby. And it was just so funny that she said that. But yeah, I had a lot of breast milk, and they sent me home with it. I put it in the freezer, and we used that through her whole first year. So we did have a couple of breastfeeding issues though in the special care nursery. When she was about 2 to 3 days, she had jaundice, and it was high enough for her to have to be under the bilirubin light. So she was in there for, I think it was for a whole 24 hours she was in there. And then we also had thrush a couple of times. The first time she got it, they just treated her, and it kind of went away, but then it came back, and then they realized that I wasn't being treated too. So then I had to be treated and her at the same time, because we were just passing it back and forth to each other. So I will do a separate video on thrush, because I feel like it is important, and I just don't want to take up so much time in this video talking just about thrush. But yeah, we did have thrush a couple of times as well. So another thing the special care nursery was really big on is Kangoo Care, and that's when you're naked, well, not naked, but that's when you're bare chest to bare chest with your baby. So while she was in the isolette, she didn't have clothes on. All she had on was a diaper. And when she was able to come out, then that's when she could put clothes on. But I did Kangoo Care pretty much every day with her. And we had like curtains, so there was privacy. That wasn't a problem. And I would just, take my top off and lay with her and put a blanket over top of us. And that's still something that I do with my children now is Kangoo Care, because it really helped her to regulate her body temperature, and it helped for like comfort and things like that for both me and for her. So we did Kangoo Care a lot, and I feel like that was especially important for her in her development and in helping her to come home. So emotionally, the special care nursery was a really hard thing. Like the labor and delivery was hard, but going home every day without your baby is super hard. And of course, she was there for so long. So I seen a lot of babies come in and out, and I seen babies, of course, that were born after her that would come in, and they were there for maybe just like little reasons, and they got to go home. And then every time they went home, I'm like, wow, I wish that was my baby going home right now. But I knew she had other things that she had to do in order to be able to come home. So that kind of hurt, you know, just seeing other babies that were born after her come home, or other babies coming in that were bigger than her and going home really quickly, where it just felt like my baby was there for a really long time. Even though I understood why she was there, and she needed to be there. There's a perfect place for her to be at that time. It was just really hard emotionally going home without your baby. So I had a lot of feelings of guilt. I had guilt over the delivery. I had guilt over her being premature. I had guilt over her being so small. I was vegetarian while I carried her, and some people are just so insensitive. Like one person said that that's the reason why I got preeclampsia, or I delivered early because of my diet. Like, that's not true. Preeclampsia is something that really there's no science. It's sudden. It comes on suddenly, and there's nothing you can do about it. I had a lot of guilty feelings about how everything went down, especially my delivery. I felt guilty about her being small. So I knew she was small since my 20-week anatomy scan. So at that point, I just started eating more. I thought, okay, if I eat more food, then she'll be bigger. But it did not work that way at all. She didn't get bigger. She was smaller than the ultrasounds even estimated her to be. So me eating more did not help. It was just more of a placental thing. She just wasn't getting the nutrition and the nutrients that she needed to grow bigger in the womb. And if I'm honest, looking back on it now, I probably did have postpartum depression. I was screened for it at my OBGYN appointment, but that was after she came home. And once she came home, I did feel like a lot better. Like I wasn't as stressed out. I wasn't as just on edge and sad. But I'm pretty sure I did have some postpartum depression, which got better gradually. So yeah, it was just like a really hard time. Like I felt guilty about having a C-section because I really wanted a vaginal birth, and I just felt like I wasn't a woman. I felt like the pregnancy had been robbed from me because it ended so early, and I was like, I never even got to experience being, like super pregnant or really big or anything like that. Like I didn't get to experience that. So I felt like a lot of those things I couldn't relate to, and it kind of was like, well, you have a baby, but like everything I had planned on hadn't worked out. And I went to childbirth classes and labor and delivery classes and everything like that. So that was hard, dealing with those feelings of guilt and just knowing that there was nothing I could have done to change the outcome of the situation, but just trying to do the best that I could with the situation that I had, that I was faced with. I was there every day. But I do remember one time I came in, and I don't even think I was late. Like I was pretty much there every day by 11. But in a special care nursery, a lot of moms, or some moms, aren't able to be there every day. So they'll have volunteers come in and hold their babies and talk to the babies and maybe read to the babies and all of that. So I remember one time I came in and somebody had my baby, and I just broke down. Like I just broke down crying. I was sobbing. I was hysterical. And they gave me my baby back, but that wasn't the point. I mean, I understand what they do by having the volunteers come in, because skin to skin is such a big component of their growth and development and all of that. But I just felt like, wow, I'm not even here for my baby, which I knew that, but it just really hurt to see somebody else with her or holding her when I knew I was coming in and I was going to be there. So that was hard for me that day as well too. So she met all of her requirements kind of quickly. Like she gained the 4 pounds. She was out of the isolate. She was maintaining her own temperature. And she was taking all of her feedings by mouth. And when they removed the tube, she didn't need the feeding tube anymore. But the last thing that she needed to do was stop having the Brady's. So I remember she was having the bradycardia. And that's when the baby's heart rate slows down while they're eating. And in a previous video, I talked about that I have a really fast letdown. So what would happen was she would go to nurse and the milk would let down and it would choke her. And I always felt so guilty about it, but there's nothing I can do. It's just a physical response to her nursing, but it was just really fast. And of course she was, you know, smaller, and she would choke, so her heart rate was slow down. And I remember the monitors went off, and every time they went off I would just like panic, like, because at the end she had done everything that she needed to do to leave the nursery, but they told me that she had to go 48 hours without having a Brady. So every day I came in, I'm looking at the machine, and then it would go off and I would just feel so discouraged because I'm like, she has to be here another 2 days at least. So that was really hard. But in premature babies, they haven't developed the breathe, suck, swallow reflex yet. Like, it's still immature in their bodies. So her eating and, you know, breathing and swallowing all at the same time, it still was a little much for her. I mean, she could do it, but sometimes her heart rate would drop while she was eating. So she had to go 48 hours without having a Brady. So that was a requirement. And she eventually did make it to be able to be sent home. But that was like the last obstacle and hurdle that we had to get over before they gave her, you know, a clean bill of health. So by the time she left the nursery, she was 4 pounds and 12 ounces. So she actually had passed the 4-pound mark a while, but like I said, she had, you know, the Brady, so she had to make sure she wasn't doing that anymore. So she came home March 5th, 2017, which was actually like about 11 days before her original due date. And I remember I was getting ready to go to the hospital, getting ready to see her, and a special care nursery called. So I picked it up right away. You know, I'm thinking maybe something bad had happened. So they called and it was like, guess what? And I was like, what? You know, I'm scared and I'm nervous. And they're like, your baby can go home today. I was like, nah. And they was like, yes, she can go home. She hasn't had any Brady's in the last 48 hours. You're perfect, ready to go. So I was super excited. I got there as fast as I could. I didn't cry yet. Not until I brought her home and I realized we did this. Like, she is home now. I'm at peace now. My baby's here. But so they got her ready, and while I was on the way, I had brought in her car seat the previous night. So while I was on the way, she had to do a car seat test. And that's where the baby is in a car seat for about an hour, just to make sure that they don't stop breathing while they're in the car seat, just to make sure that they're ready for that part of discharge. And she passed out with flying colors. So by the time I got there, she was disconnected from everything. She was cleaned up. She had on her clothes, and it was just like it was like the moment I was looking forward to the whole time. Like, since I had left the hospital myself, was being able to bring her home. And so that was like the best. That was to be able to put her in the car seat and go home together. It was a wonderful thing. So that is my NICU experience. It was hard, it was trying, it was stressful, it was emotional, but she came home healthy, and we really haven't had any problems physically since then. I can do another video about her development as being premature, because a lot of like the milestones that she's supposed to hit for her age were a bit delayed, and a lot of times they had to use her adjusted age. So that's normal for a premature baby. And about 2, I would say, is when she caught up to her peers. But yeah, so that's my NICU experience at the special care nursery at the hospital I delivered at. And I'm grateful every day for the nurses that were there and the doctors that took care of us. They did a great job. I'm grateful for my mother, because I feel like if I didn't have her personal support, especially with the breastfeeding, I don't know where I'd be. So thank you for watching if you watched this far. If any of you have been through this experience, leave a comment below about how things happened for you, or maybe how you were feeling emotionally during that time. And remember to let your story be your power. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.